Wealthy sheriff gave the rancher his paralyzed daughter as a joke, but he saw her true potential. The town of Red Willow was small and dusty, surrounded by wide fields, rolling hills, and the occasional ranch stretching as far as the eye could see. Life moved slowly here, and everyone knew everyone else's business. Among the townspeople, the sheriff was both respected and feared. He was wealthy, owning the largest ranch in the area, and he carried himself with a sense of pride that sometimes bordered on arrogance. People admired his success, but they also whispered about his sharp tongue and love for practical jokes that often went too far. The sheriff had a daughter named Clara. She was a young woman in her early 20s, but a childhood accident had left her paralyzed from the waist down. She moved around in a wheelchair and relied on her family for certain needs, but she had developed a keen mind and an observant nature that made her different from anyone else in town. Clara was quiet and thoughtful, often watching the world around her with a sharp, calculating eye. People underestimated her because of her paralysis, but she had a spark that could not be ignored. One afternoon, the sheriff rode into town on his horse, a broad smile on his face and a mischievous glint in his eyes. He had a plan, one of those pranks that he thought would amuse himself and the townsfolk. He approached the rancher named Samuel, a humble man who worked tirelessly on a small ranch at the edge of town. Samuel was known for his integrity and strong work ethic, but he had little wealth and even less influence. He was respected quietly by the townspeople, but the sheriff saw him as an easy target for his joke. "Samuel," the sheriff called, his voice booming across the dusty street. "I have an offer for you." Samuel looked up, wiping the sweat from his brow, unsure what the sheriff meant. He had dealt with the man before and knew that anything the sheriff called an offer might carry a hidden sting. The sheriff leaned on his horse, grinning. "I'm thinking of giving you something special, something that could change your life entirely. My daughter, Clara, she needs a strong man to take care of her, and I think you're just the right person." Samuel blinked, stunned. The words sounded cruel. Clara, paralyzed and delicate, was not something to give away as a joke. His mind raced. Surely this was a jest, some ridiculous idea the sheriff had cooked up to amuse himself. Samuel's cheeks burned, partly with embarrassment and partly with indignation. He opened his mouth to protest, but the sheriff laughed loudly before he could say anything. "Oh, don't look so serious," the sheriff said, his grin widening. "I'm just teasing, but imagine the surprise of the townspeople when you agree. They'd be talking about it for months." Samuel's stomach twisted. He did not know whether to feel insulted or concerned. He had always treated the sheriff with respect, but this time the man had crossed a line. Still, Samuel was not someone to back away from a challenge, even if it was strange or uncomfortable. He knew the town would watch his reaction closely, and any refusal could make him look weak. I need to think about it," Samuel said carefully, trying to keep his voice calm. The sheriff laughed again and rode off, leaving Samuel standing in the middle of the street, feeling a mixture of anger and confusion. Around him, townspeople had gathered. Some whispered, covering their mouths to hide laughter. Others looked at Samuel with curiosity, wondering how he would respond. The moment hung in the air like a thick cloud, and Samuel realized that this was not a simple joke anymore. It was a test of character. That evening, Samuel sat on the porch of his modest home, staring at the horizon. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the fields. His thoughts kept returning to Clara. He did not know her well. He had seen her at town events, always quiet, always observant. But he had never spoken to her beyond polite greetings. The idea of suddenly being responsible for someone, especially someone in her condition, was daunting. Yet there was a strange pull in his mind, a curiosity about who she really was. The next morning, Samuel decided he had to meet her. It was the only way to understand what he was really dealing with. He rode his horse to the sheriff's ranch. a sprawling property with white fences, rolling pastures, and barns filled with cattle. The sheriff greeted him with the same teasing smile, clearly expecting Samuel to be overwhelmed. Clara was in the garden, sitting in her wheelchair near the flower beds. When she saw Samuel approach, she gave a small nod, her expression unreadable. She had heard of him, of course, but she had never spoken to him directly. Samuel introduced himself carefully, trying to convey respect and sincerity. Clara's eyes studied him closely. She did not speak much at first, letting him get a sense of her. Over the next few hours, Samuel noticed something remarkable. Clara was not the fragile, helpless person he had imagined. She asked questions about his ranch, about the work he did, and even offered suggestions about how to manage certain tasks. She had a clear understanding of livestock, finances, and the practicalities of running a ranch, far beyond what her age or condition might suggest. Samuel began to feel a sense of admiration mixed with surprise. This young woman, whom he had assumed would need constant care, was intelligent, resourceful, and determined. She had adapted her life to her limitations and refused to let them define her. Samuel realized that there was more to Clara than anyone in town had ever noticed, including the sheriff. The sheriff watched from a distance, expecting to see discomfort or awkwardness. Instead, he saw Samuel listening intently, nodding, and engaging with Clara. Slowly, the sheriff's laughter faded. What had started as a joke now looked very different. Clara was showing strength, intelligence, and an independence that even he had not fully recognized. As the sun began to set, Samuel prepared to leave. He thanked Clara for her time and promised to return soon. On the ride back home, he could not stop thinking about what he had witnessed. Clara's potential was undeniable. The idea of taking on the responsibility of supporting her did not feel like a burden anymore. It felt like an opportunity. Meanwhile, Clara watched him leave, a small smile playing on her lips. She could sense that Samuel was different from the other men in town. He did not see her as weak or pitiful. He listened, observed, and treated her as an equal in conversation. For the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope that someone might truly understand her abilities rather than pity her limitations. That night the town buzzed with gossip. People whispered about the sheriff's joke, about Samuel's reaction, and about Clara herself. Some doubted Samuel's courage, while others admired his calm and thoughtful approach. No one could deny that this unusual encounter had changed the dynamics in Red Willow. The sheriff's daughter, long underestimated, had begun to show a side of herself that few had ever seen. For Samuel, the night brought reflection. He realized that what had started as a strange, uncomfortable situation had the potential to change not just his life, but Clara's as well. He felt a sense of responsibility, but also a growing respect and admiration. He knew the path ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that with patience, understanding, and effort, they could both discover something remarkable together. By the next morning, Samuel had made his decision. He would accept the challenge, not as a joke, not as a burden, but as an opportunity to work with someone who had extraordinary talent waiting to be recognized. Little did he know, this choice would not only change their lives, but would also teach the entire town a lesson about potential, respect, and the strength hidden in unexpected places. And so, what began as a cruel joke by a wealthy sheriff became the start of a journey that neither Samuel nor Clara could have predicted. A journey that would reveal courage, intelligence, and the true value of seeing people for who they really are, beyond appearances and limitations. The morning after his decision, Samuel returned to the sheriff's ranch with a mixture of determination and curiosity. He did not know exactly what awaited him, but he felt certain that Clara was unlike anyone he had ever met. The town was slowly waking, the sun casting golden light across the fields, and the air carried the faint scent of wildflowers and hay. Samuel rode his horse steadily, thinking about how he would approach Clara and begin to understand her better. When he arrived, Clara was in the garden again, tending to the flowers near her wheelchair. She looked up as he approached, her sharp eyes meeting his. There was no surprise on her face, only quiet observation. Samuel dismounted and greeted her politely. "Good morning, Clara. I hope I'm not disturbing your work." Clara shook her head gently. "Not at all. It's nice to have company," she replied, her voice calm and confident. "I was thinking about your ranch yesterday. You work very hard. I wonder if I could help you in some way." Samuel blinked in surprise. He had expected caution or perhaps even resentment, but instead she offered insight and curiosity. "Help me." "You mean with advice or?" he asked, unsure. Clara smiled faintly. "Both. I may not be able to do everything physically, but I have ideas. I can help you plan, organize, and think ahead. Sometimes thinking carefully can be just as useful as doing the work with your hands." Samuel felt a warmth in his chest. He had underestimated her. All his life, people had assumed that her paralysis made her limited. But here she was, offering wisdom and perspective far beyond her years. He realized that her situation had forced her to develop skills others might never need. She had learned to see the world differently, and that vision was valuable. Over the next few days, Samuel spent long hours with Clara. He showed her the ranch, explaining the routines, the cattle, the crops, and the challenges he faced. Clara listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions that revealed not only intelligence but also practical understanding. She noticed patterns he had never thought about, suggesting ways to improve efficiency and organization. "Your cattle are grazing too close together in that pasture," she pointed out one morning. "It will wear out the grass quickly, and you'll have to move them sooner. If you rotate them differently, you can preserve the fields longer." Samuel stared at her, impressed. "I hadn't considered that. You're right. That could save me a lot of trouble." Clara smiled. "I like observing. I notice details that others might miss. That's why I think I can help." As the days passed, Samuel began to trust her judgment. He noticed that the workers on the ranch, initially skeptical, were also starting to pay attention to her advice. She spoke with clarity and authority, and though she used a wheelchair, her presence commanded respect. Even the sheriff, watching from his porch, could not hide his surprise. What he had intended as a joke was now unfolding into something meaningful. One afternoon, a problem arose that tested their teamwork. A sudden storm had damaged part of the barn, and a group of workers was unsure how to fix it quickly. Samuel was ready to rush in and take charge, but Clara stopped him gently. "Let's think first," she said calmly. "If we plan carefully, we can repair it faster and safer. Jumping in without thought might make it worse." Samuel hesitated, then nodded. Together, they organized the workers. Clara directed them efficiently, pointing out where support beams should go and how to secure the roof. Samuel followed her instructions, helping physically where he could, but allowing her guidance to lead. By the evening, the barn was repaired better than before, and the workers were astonished. "Clara knows what she's doing," one of the ranch hands whispered to Samuel. "She may not move like the rest of us, but she thinks faster than anyone I've met." Samuel smiled, proud but humble. He had always believed that hard work alone defined success, but Clara showed him that intelligence, strategy, and determination were just as important. Meanwhile, Clara began to see Samuel in a new light. He was patient, kind, and willing to listen. Unlike many men she had known, he did not pity her or treat her differently because of her paralysis. He respected her abilities and trusted her judgment. Slowly, a friendship developed between them, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Samuel and Clara sat together near the stables, discussing the ranch's future. Clara suggested ways to improve the irrigation system, manage the fields, and even attract more buyers for the cattle. Samuel listened intently, asking questions and noting down ideas. He realized that her input could turn his struggling ranch into a prosperous one. "You really think this could work?" Samuel asked, amazed at her vision. Clara nodded. "It won't be easy, but I believe it can. Success comes from careful planning, patience, and doing the right thing at the right time. We can make it happen if we work together." Her words struck a chord in Samuel. He had always been practical and hardworking, but Clara brought creativity, intelligence, and strategy into the mix. He began to feel hope and excitement, feelings he had not experienced in years. As their collaboration deepened, the townspeople could not help but notice. Whispers began to circulate about the sheriff's daughter and the humble rancher working side by side. Some were skeptical, still thinking of Clara as someone who could not contribute meaningfully. Others were curious and began to admire her determination. Slowly, opinions began to shift and respect replaced doubt. The sheriff, observing quietly, felt a mix of pride and shame. He had intended his offer as a joke, something to amuse himself, but now he saw that Clara's abilities exceeded even his expectations. He realized that he had underestimated his daughter and that his prank had revealed not weakness, but incredible potential. One day, Samuel and Clara faced another challenge. A neighboring rancher tried to negotiate a difficult trade, underestimating Clara's knowledge and Samuel's integrity. Clara spoke confidently, analyzing the terms and suggesting alternatives. Samuel followed her advice, negotiating a fair deal that benefited their ranch. The neighboring rancher left impressed, surprised that a young woman in a wheelchair could be so capable. Clara's confidence grew with each success, and Samuel felt a sense of pride and responsibility. He began to understand that taking her under his guidance was not just an obligation, it was a chance to learn, grow, and build something remarkable together. As weeks passed, their partnership strengthened. Samuel taught Clara practical skills, and she offered insights that improved every aspect of the ranch. They developed a rhythm, a balance of experience and intelligence, of hard work and careful planning. Clara began to feel independent, capable of making decisions and contributing fully. Samuel began to see the world differently, realizing that ability was not defined by physical strength alone. By the end of Part 2, the small town of Red Willow was witnessing a transformation. Clara was no longer seen as a helpless young woman, but as a strong, intelligent, and capable individual. Samuel had become her ally, mentor, and friend. Together, they began to show the town that potential could be found in unexpected places, and that with respect, trust, and determination, even the most unusual situations could lead to extraordinary outcomes. The sheriff, watching from a distance, could not help but feel both pride and humility. He had intended his words as a joke, but they had uncovered a partnership that would change lives. The journey was only beginning, but it promised growth, challenges, and the discovery of true potential that lay hidden beneath appearances and assumptions. The following weeks brought new challenges for Samuel and Clara. The ranch was larger than Samuel had ever managed alone, and maintaining it required constant attention. Rain had been scarce, and some pastures were beginning to dry. Samuel worked from dawn to dusk, guiding the workers, checking the cattle, and ensuring the crops were cared for. Clara, though limited physically, was always present, observing carefully and offering suggestions. Her mind worked faster than anyone else's, and her insights often solved problems before they became crises. One morning, Samuel noticed Clara sitting quietly in the corner of the barn, her eyes fixed on the cattle. He approached and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Clara looked up at him. "I've noticed the younger calves are struggling to find the best grazing spots. They're too small to compete with the older cattle. If we separate them temporarily, they will have a chance to grow stronger. Then when we return them, the herd will be healthier overall." Samuel studied the calves and nodded. "You're right, that's a smart idea. Let's do it." They spent the morning setting up a separate pen for the young calves. Clara directed Samuel and the ranch hands efficiently, explaining how to guide the calves without stressing them. By the afternoon, the task was complete, and Samuel was amazed at how well Clara managed everything. Even though she could not move around easily, she commanded attention with her confidence, knowledge, and calm determination. News of her abilities spread slowly through the town. Some townspeople were skeptical, thinking Samuel might be exaggerating, but others began to see for themselves. When they visited the ranch, they noticed Clara speaking with authority, offering solutions to problems that Samuel had struggled with for years. People started to respect her, not just because of her intelligence, but because she treated everyone fairly and kindly. One afternoon, a fire broke out near the edge of the ranch. A spark from a nearby field had ignited dry grass, and the flames were spreading quickly. Samuel and the ranch hands rushed to contain it, but Clara remained calm. "We need to work together," she called out. "Focus on controlling the fire from the edges so it doesn't reach the barns or the cattle." Samuel followed her directions, dividing the workers into teams. Clara's plan worked perfectly. The fire was contained before it could cause serious damage, and the cattle were safe. Samuel looked at her with admiration. "I can't believe how well you handled that," he said, panting from the exertion. Clara smiled faintly. "Thinking clearly in emergencies is important. Panic can make things worse. You need to stay calm and act with a plan." After the fire, even the sheriff could no longer deny Clara's capabilities. He had watched from a distance, expecting chaos, but instead he saw strategy, leadership, and courage. What had started as a joke now revealed a daughter whose intelligence, resilience, and bravery could not be underestimated. Life on the ranch continued, and with each passing day, Clara became more involved in the operations. She devised ways to improve irrigation, planned grazing schedules, and even helped Samuel negotiate better deals for cattle sales. Her knowledge of finances surprised Samuel, as she suggested methods to save money and invest wisely. One day, Samuel was approached by a neighboring rancher with an offer to buy some of their cattle at a low price. He was unsure whether to accept, but Clara studied the situation carefully. "If we sell now, we will get quick cash, but we will lose potential profit," she said. "If we wait a little and find better buyers, we can get more value for the herd." Samuel trusted her judgment. They declined the offer and waited. Within a few weeks, they found buyers willing to pay a higher price. Samuel realized that Clara's careful planning had saved them significant money. The workers began to notice Clara's influence on the ranch. She was not just giving orders, she was teaching them to think critically and work smarter. Slowly, the morale of the ranch improved. The team worked together more efficiently, and the ranch began to thrive. Despite these successes, challenges continued. One evening, a severe storm hit the area. Rain poured heavily, and the wind shook the barns. Samuel and Clara worked side by side, making sure the animals were safe and that the fences held strong. Clara could not move quickly in her wheelchair, but she directed Samuel and the workers with precision, identifying weak spots in the barns and areas where the cattle might need protection. When the storm passed, the ranch was mostly intact. Samuel was exhausted but grateful for Clara's guidance. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he said sincerely. Clara smiled. "We did it together. You took action and I helped guide it. That's teamwork." The sheriff, who had come to check on the property after hearing about the storm, was visibly impressed. He had underestimated his daughter for too long. Clara's courage, intelligence, and ability to remain calm under pressure had saved the ranch from disaster. The sheriff realized that his joke had unintentionally revealed her strength, and he began to see her in a new light, not as a delicate girl needing protection, but as a capable and strong young woman who could achieve great things. With each passing week, Clara's confidence grew. She started introducing new methods for managing the ranch. She suggested rotating crops to maintain soil health, improving water storage systems, and even keeping detailed records of expenses and sales to make better business decisions. Samuel followed her guidance, amazed at how much he had learned from her in such a short time. Clara also began mentoring some of the younger ranch hands. She taught them problem-solving skills, careful observation, and planning. Her patience and encouragement inspired them to improve their work. Samuel noticed that the ranch's overall productivity increased, and the community began to take notice. Even the townspeople who had once whispered or laughed at the sheriff's joke were beginning to admire Clara. They saw her strength, intelligence, and dedication. People started to treat her with respect, and some even came to her for advice on matters outside the ranch. Clara's reputation grew, not because of her father's wealth or power, but because of her own abilities and determination. One day, Samuel and Clara faced another unexpected challenge. A new disease began affecting some of the cattle. Samuel was unsure how to handle it, but Clara remained calm. She researched methods, consulted experts, and devised a plan to isolate the affected animals and prevent the disease from spreading. Samuel followed her instructions carefully, and within days, the problem was under control. The ranch's survival depended on her knowledge and careful thinking, and once again, Clara had proven her worth. Through all these experiences, Samuel's respect and admiration for Clara grew. He had taken her in reluctantly at first, unsure what to expect, but now he saw her as a partner in every sense. They shared ideas, solved problems, and faced challenges together. Samuel realized that Clara's limitations did not define her. Her intelligence, courage, and determination defined who she was. By the end of Part 3, the ranch was thriving more than ever. Clara had shown her true potential, not just to Samuel and the sheriff, but to everyone around them. She had turned a situation that began as a cruel joke into an opportunity to demonstrate her abilities and leadership. The town of Red Willow began to see her differently, recognizing that strength comes in many forms and that determination and intelligence are just as powerful as physical ability. The sheriff, once proud and careless with words, had learned a valuable lesson. He had underestimated his daughter and had treated her as a joke, but now he saw that she had exceeded every expectation. Clara had proven that she was not defined by her paralysis, but by her mind, her courage, and her unwavering determination. Samuel and Clara had become a team, facing every challenge together. They had transformed the ranch, earned the respect of the townspeople, and shown that potential could be found in the most unexpected places. Part 3 of their journey revealed that with intelligence, perseverance, and trust in each other, they could overcome any obstacle and achieve greatness. Life on the ranch continued to improve, but it was not without its challenges. Samuel and Clara had formed a strong partnership, and together they had solved many problems, but the outside world still tested them. A neighboring rancher named Marcus had long envied Samuel's land and growing reputation. Marcus was a proud and competitive man who believed success was measured only by size, wealth, and power. When he saw the sheriff's daughter working so effectively with Samuel, he became suspicious and even resentful. One morning, Marcus rode into town, his face stern. "I've been hearing stories about Samuel and the girl," he said to some townspeople at the general store. "I want to see it for myself. I doubt she can do anything useful on a ranch." Samuel had heard about Marcus's plans and prepared himself. He knew that Marcus would try to challenge them, perhaps to discredit Clara or undermine the ranch. Clara, however, remained calm. She had learned to face skepticism and criticism with patience. "We will show him the truth with our work, not words," she said quietly. When Marcus arrived at the ranch, he expected to see disorder or weakness. Instead, he saw Clara moving efficiently in her wheelchair, giving clear instructions to the ranch hands. She coordinated the grazing, checked the fences, and monitored the water supply. Samuel stood nearby, following her guidance and supporting her decisions. Marcus's eyes narrowed, realizing that his assumptions were wrong. Over the next few weeks, Marcus tried several ways to challenge them. He offered to buy some of Samuel's cattle at low prices, spread rumors about their abilities, and even hinted that the sheriff's daughter could not handle responsibility. But Clara anticipated these moves. She kept careful records, communicated clearly with Samuel, and planned each step thoughtfully. Every attempt by Marcus to interfere was met with a well-prepared solution. One day, Marcus tried to convince other townspeople that Samuel and Clara were making mistakes in the fields. He pointed out a small patch of land that was dry and suggested they had neglected it. Clara examined it carefully, then explained how the area was part of a planned rotation. "We are letting the soil rest and regain nutrients," she said calmly. "This will make the crops stronger and more productive in the long run." What may seem like neglect is actually careful planning. Samuel watched in admiration. Clara had the ability to see the bigger picture, to anticipate problems, and to make informed decisions that others could not. Marcus was forced to step back, realizing that his attempts to create trouble had failed. The townspeople who witnessed the interaction began to respect Clara even more. Despite these victories, challenges continued to arise. One evening, a sudden drought threatened the pastures. The grass was drying quickly, and the cattle needed water. Samuel worried that they might not have enough resources to sustain the herd. Clara, however, remained calm. She suggested checking all water sources and rotating the cattle so that each area received attention. She even devised a schedule for rationing water without causing stress to the animals. Samuel followed her guidance, impressed by her foresight. Together, they managed the drought successfully. The cattle remained healthy, and the ranch survived a threat that could have caused serious damage. Once again, Clara had demonstrated that intelligence and careful planning could overcome even natural challenges. The town began to notice the changes at the ranch. People whispered about how a young woman in a wheelchair had transformed the property into one of the most efficient and well-managed in the region. Samuel's respect for Clara grew every day. He had come to realize that taking her in was not a burden, but a blessing. Her insights, courage, and determination had improved not only the ranch, but also the lives of everyone who worked there. Even the sheriff began to understand the full extent of Clara's abilities. He had initially intended his words as a joke, but now he watched with pride and humility as his daughter handled challenges with intelligence and grace. He had underestimated her for years, but he could no longer deny that she was extraordinary. One afternoon, Clara suggested expanding the ranch's operations to include a small orchard. Samuel was hesitant at first, worried about the extra work and cost. Clara, however, had already researched the land, climate, and best crops to plant. She explained how the orchard could provide additional income, improve soil health, and attract buyers who appreciated fresh produce. Samuel listened carefully and agreed to her plan. Over the next several weeks, Clara supervised the planting of the orchard. She taught the workers how to care for the young trees, monitor soil moisture, and protect the plants from pests. Samuel helped where he could, but he relied heavily on Clara's guidance. The orchard flourished, and the new venture brought both pride and income to the ranch. While the orchard grew, Marcus continued to watch from a distance, still trying to find flaws. He attempted to start conflicts with the ranch workers, offering them better pay to leave Samuel's ranch. Clara anticipated this move and held meetings with the workers, emphasizing the importance of loyalty, teamwork, and trust. She encouraged them to see the ranch as a family where everyone's contribution mattered. The workers responded positively. They appreciated Clara's leadership, her fairness, and her ability to think clearly under pressure. They saw that she respected them, listened to their ideas, and valued their work. Even though she could not physically perform every task, her guidance and intelligence made their jobs easier and more efficient. One day, a severe storm approached, stronger than any they had seen. The wind howled, rain poured, and lightning flashed across the sky. Samuel and Clara quickly organized the workers to secure the barns, protect the cattle, and ensure that the fences held. Clara's careful planning and quick thinking prevented serious damage. When the storm passed, the ranch was mostly intact and the workers were safe and unharmed. Samuel looked at Clara with admiration. "Your planning saved us today," he said. "I don't know what I would have done without you," Clara smiled. "We did it together. You acted and I guided. That is how we succeed." The sheriff, watching the events unfold, felt a mixture of pride and regret. He had underestimated Clara's abilities and treated her as a joke, but now he saw that she was not only capable but exceptional. Her intelligence, courage, and determination had transformed the ranch, strengthened Samuel's leadership, and inspired the townspeople. By the end of Part 4, Clara and Samuel had faced numerous challenges: rivalry, natural threats, and skepticism. But they had overcome them all through teamwork, intelligence, and trust. The ranch was thriving, the workers were motivated, and the town's perception of Clara had changed completely. She was no longer seen as a delicate young woman in a wheelchair. She was recognized as a leader, strategist, and inspiration. The partnership between Samuel and Clara had grown stronger, their bond built on mutual respect, trust, and shared goals. They had proven that challenges could be met with courage and careful planning, and that intelligence, determination, and leadership could overcome even the toughest obstacles. Even Marcus, the rival rancher, had begun to understand that strength and success were not always measured by wealth, size, or physical ability. He could not ignore Clara's talent and her influence on the ranch. Though he remained competitive, he had no choice but to acknowledge the truth. Clara was extraordinary. The sheriff, who had once joked thoughtlessly about his daughter, had learned an important lesson. He had underestimated her for years, but now he recognized her true potential. Clara's courage, intelligence, and ability to lead had changed the ranch, inspired the town, and transformed Samuel's life. Part 4 showed that challenges, both external and internal, could test the strength of character, patience, and intelligence. Clara and Samuel had faced rivalry, natural threats, and skepticism, but together they had proven that careful planning, teamwork, and determination could overcome any obstacle. The stage was now set for the final part of their journey, where their achievements would be recognized, and their bond would demonstrate the full power of respect, trust, and true potential. The ranch had changed completely since Samuel and Clara began working together. What had once been a small, struggling property was now thriving, organized, and respected across the region. The cattle were healthy, the fields were well managed, and the new orchard was producing fruit that brought extra income and pride. But more importantly, the town had changed its perception of Clara. No longer did people see her as a delicate young woman in a wheelchair. They saw her as intelligent, capable, and strong. Clara herself had changed. Through the challenges and successes, she had gained confidence in her abilities. She no longer doubted herself or worried about what others thought. She had proven to Samuel, to the sheriff, and to the townspeople that her mind, courage, and determination were her true strengths. She moved through the ranch with authority, guiding workers, making decisions, and solving problems with precision and calm. Samuel admired her more than ever. When they first met, he had been hesitant and uncertain. But over time, he realized that Clara was not just helping him manage the ranch. She had become his partner, his equal, and his inspiration. Together, they had faced droughts, storms, rivalry, and challenges from nature and people alike. Every time they overcame an obstacle, Their respect and trust for each other grew. The sheriff, who had once treated his daughter as the subject of a cruel joke, had changed too. He spent less time boasting about his wealth or trying to control the town and more time observing Clara. He noticed her intelligence, her ability to plan and lead, and her courage in moments of crisis. One afternoon, he approached her quietly in the orchard. "You've done more than I ever imagined," he said sincerely. "I was wrong to underestimate you, and I am proud of what you have accomplished." Clara looked at him, her eyes calm but serious. "Thank you. It has not been easy, but I have learned that challenges can be opportunities if you face them with thought and determination." The sheriff nodded. He felt a mixture of pride, humility, and regret for the years he had doubted her. He realized that his daughter's strength was not physical. It was her mind, her spirit, and her ability to persevere. Word of the ranch's transformation spread throughout the town and beyond. People who had once mocked the idea of Clara's involvement now sought her advice. They came to see how she managed the cattle, planned the crops, and organized the workers. She shared her knowledge generously, teaching others that leadership and intelligence were valuable tools for success. Even Marcus, the rival rancher, could no longer ignore the truth. He had tried to challenge them and disrupt their work, but Clara's careful planning and Samuel's support had always prevailed. Marcus began to respect her, though reluctantly. He realized that success was not about arrogance or wealth alone, but about skill, determination, and the ability to inspire others. One afternoon, Samuel and Clara decided to hold a small gathering at the ranch. They invited townspeople, neighbors, and workers to celebrate the successes of the past months. The event was filled with laughter, conversation, and admiration. People marveled at the orchards, the healthy cattle, and the well-managed fields. But more than that, they marveled at Clara. They saw a young woman who had faced physical challenges, skepticism, and doubt, yet had achieved remarkable success through intelligence, patience, and courage. During the gathering, Samuel addressed the crowd. "This ranch is not just my work," he said. "It is the result of teamwork, dedication, and guidance from someone who many of you underestimated. Clara has shown that ability is not defined by appearance or limitation, but by determination, intelligence, and heart." The crowd applauded, and Clara felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. She realized that her abilities, once dismissed, were now recognized and respected. She had turned a situation that began as a cruel joke into an opportunity to demonstrate her true potential. The sheriff stood nearby, quietly observing. He had learned an important lesson about humility, respect, and the danger of underestimating others. His daughter, whom he had once treated thoughtlessly, had become a leader, a strategist, and an inspiration. He approached Clara and Samuel, offering a genuine smile. "You both have done something remarkable," he said. "I am proud of you, Clara, and grateful to you, Samuel, for seeing her true potential." Clara nodded, her expression serene. "Thank you. It has been a journey, but we have learned a lot along the way." As the sun set over the fields, the ranch glowed in golden light. Samuel and Clara walked together through the orchards, discussing future plans. They talked about expanding the ranch further, improving irrigation, and introducing new crops. Clara suggested ideas confidently, and Samuel listened carefully, taking notes and sharing his thoughts. Their partnership had grown stronger than ever. The workers and townspeople watched them, inspired by what they had accomplished. Clara had become a symbol of perseverance, intelligence, and courage. She had shown that limitations could be overcome, and that true strength came from within. Samuel had become a partner and ally, demonstrating that respect, trust, and open-mindedness could transform relationships and lead to great success. Over the following months, the ranch continued to prosper. Clara implemented new systems for managing resources, planning work, and training the workers. Samuel supported her every step of the way, learning from her insights and sharing his experience. Together, they created an environment where hard work, intelligence, and collaboration were valued above all else. The town of Red Willow began to change as well. People who had once judged quickly learned to look deeper, to see potential in unexpected places. Children watched Clara as a role model, understanding that challenges could be overcome with determination and thoughtfulness. Adults recognized that true leadership was about guidance, respect, and vision, not only wealth or power. One quiet evening, Samuel and Clara sat on the porch looking out over the fields. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. They reflected on the journey they had taken, from the sheriff's cruel joke to a thriving ranch and a partnership built on trust and respect. "It's been quite a journey," Samuel said softly. Clara smiled. "Yes. We faced challenges, doubts, and obstacles, but we learned from each one. We proved that potential is not always obvious, but it can be extraordinary when recognized and nurtured." Samuel nodded. "I am grateful for every moment and for everything you have taught me." Clara looked out over the ranch, her expression thoughtful. "We have only begun. There is still much to do, but now we know what we are capable of. We can achieve anything if we continue to work together and trust in our abilities." The sheriff, standing nearby, watched them with pride and humility. He had learned a valuable lesson about underestimating others and the importance of recognizing true potential. Clara had not only transformed the ranch, but she had also inspired everyone around her to see beyond appearances and expectations. By the end of the story, Samuel and Clara had created more than a successful ranch. They had built a legacy. They had shown that determination, intelligence, courage, and collaboration could overcome any challenge. Clara's true potential had been recognized, her abilities celebrated, and her leadership respected. The sheriff had learned humility, Samuel had found an equal partner, and the town had witnessed the power of perseverance and vision. The ranch thrived, the workers were loyal and motivated, and the town respected Clara and Samuel. Life was not always easy, but together they faced every challenge with courage and intelligence. What had started as a joke by the sheriff had turned into a remarkable story of growth, trust, and transformation. In the quiet of the evening, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, Clara and Samuel walked through the fields together. They had achieved success, earned respect, and discovered the extraordinary strength within themselves and each other. Their journey showed that even the most unlikely beginnings could lead to greatness, and that true potential is revealed when someone is given the opportunity, guidance, and trust to shine. The story of Clara and Samuel became known in Red Willow as a tale of inspiration, showing that challenges can be opportunities, that intelligence and courage can triumph over doubt, and that even the most unexpected partnerships can create something extraordinary.